What's up, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode of In the Trenches. Our guest today is a commercial photographer with a wealth of knowledge and insight and opinion regarding the business side of photography. I cannot wait for y'all to hear this episode, but I want to remind y'all, please, if you're enjoying the content, please like, share, and subscribe. So let's jump right now into it with Jason Myers. All right, Jason Myers is in the house. Thank you for joining us in the trenches.
Made it all the way to Antioch. This is amazing.
Yeah, well, here we are in live from Antioch.
Right next to broadcasting from the Tanger outlets. Yeah, we're going to go over and get some Columbia sportswear right afterwards.
Oh my God, I watched that mall. You know, I used to go see movies. They had that $2 cinema movie over at the Bell, over in Antioch, that Bell Road Mall.
Did they sell beer?
No, but there was a big shootout there.
Oh, yeah. That's why
and
it was
then
$2.
it got closed, and I think everything went away.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, are you a native to Nashville?
Florida. I'm a Florida man.
That explains a lot.
Yep, I'm a Florida man. Grew up near Gainesville, a little town called Trenton, about 30 minutes west. Went to University of Florida.
You did.
I played a little football. That's why I've got the knee injuries most of the time. Moved down to South Florida right after college and lived in the West Palm Beach area. So was there 13 years and moved here in 2014.
Huh.
2014.
Miami, that didn't suck. That sounded like fun.
Oh, when you're 20 something and you're in South Florida, you're living in paradise. And that was the late 90s, early 2000s.
That's about when I moved to LA.
Okay.
I was LA. Oh no, not moved to LA early. Yeah, about then.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah,
we're about the same age, right?
Yeah, I am 50 years old this year.
Okay, I'm 48.
I remember the day when I was sitting in a Scholastic book fair on a calculator in like
you're aging us.
Third or fourth grade going, how old will I be what year will it be when I'm 50? And it said 2024. And I went,
we're here. Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm stoked to have you on here. Not also because I'm a fan of your work and we're like-minded creatives, but also your perspective and your insight, having, seen a lot and been working in the field, in the craft actually, and seeing just the landscape change over the years. Yeah. And I think it'd be fun to go back and forth because I've been doing this since 18 years old.
Yeah. Well, fun fact, and I don't know if you know this, I jumped into this career at 35.
Let's go. Okay, I was going to ask you, so where did photo come in?
Yeah.
When you got a knee injury and you were going to play pro, and then you just got a knee injury, you just had to switch to photo, right?
Yeah. No, it's funny because I look back and my path is not the conventional path. I didn't go to art school. I didn't go to film school. I didn't assist. I didn't do any of the normal things. Going back to what I was saying about playing sports, I initially went to University of Southern Mississippi, and I hurt my knee in high school. A lot of schools got this is 93. A lot of schools, when you hurt your knee, they're like, we're not going to take a chance. Yeah. Now it's a whole, you're back up and running in 2 weeks. And so I went off to Southern Miss, got there, really didn't, it wasn't what I grew up around, which was the University of Florida and Florida Gators and Gainesville and 85,000, 90,000 fans in the stadium. And I transferred back, went to UF and walked on and was there.
Football was a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I got an SEC championship ring and I sat on the sidelines and watched a lot of Heisman Trophy winners and NFL guys go do their thing and got to be part of that.
Yeah.
My playing time was, we'll call it minimal.
That doesn't matter. You're in the playing field with them. Yeah.
I got to do some things that the average college student didn't get to do, right?
With a major school.
With a major school at a time where we were on top of the world. We were, winning SEC championships every year, playing for national championships. And summer of 96, I hurt my knee again. And I was like, I'm kind of done, after.
How old are you at this point?
Well, nice. I'm 20.
Yeah,
one.
2 knee injuries, 2 knee surgeries.
Yeah, like few years apart, and I decided it's time to just be a normal student, which was amazing because I got to go be a normal student having, I was in a fraternity. So I got to travel with and go to road games, do all the things I never got to do, got to do. And you're trying to get to this point where you're like, okay, what's the next step anyways? Well, I didn't have any aspirations of playing professionally. It was just kind of a thing I was kind of good at. And when I stopped playing, I picked the camera back up and I was the historian for our house, which I was like, what is that? And they're like, oh, just drunk guy with a camera. And I was like, well, I can do that. How hard is that?
Hey, uncle.
And this was back in the day. And I don't know if you ever even knew about this, like in the university systems or there used to be like an event photo companies, and they would go and they would shoot they would shoot the event, and they would send out literally proof sheets of the event, and you would write down your name.
Oh yeah.
And it was called Flash Photo. That was, so I started working for Flash Photo. I was going to all the parties anyways. Might as well bring a camera, and I'd have like 10 rolls of film on my hip, and I'd have my Nikon, and I would shoot the parties. And then I got into the real world. I graduated and went into healthcare. I was in healthcare for almost 6 years.
Wow, that's a gnarly position.
People go, wait, hold up.
Yeah.
But what it did, I started as a healthcare recruiter, hiring medical personnel. Then we managed care for typically catastrophically ill pediatric patients. So kids that were in their own home that needed 24-hour a day nursing care. Like we managed that care.
Wow.
So, I learned a lot about people, a lot about sales, a lot about business, how to handle P&L, how to understand profit margins, all of those things early. And had moved up, opened my own office in Daytona Beach from scratch. I knew nothing about opening an office, but I got thrown into it. And we became a successful, profitable office in a short amount of time. Moved back to South Florida to look at doing something else with the company, and decided it was time to make a pivot. It was, I don't know what it was. It was something about moving back south. And I was like, this is going to be, I thought it'd be the thing that would last forever. And then I quickly realized that a lot of what I enjoyed about it were things that we're losing steam. We went from 60 offices to 600 with the company when I was there. So it was like all this go. And then you get there and you're like, well, now what? There's only so many places to go. So I made a pivot into the golf and tennis business. Always played sports. I used to like to bang on golf balls when I was in high school, even though we didn't have a golf team. I'd hit them out in my backyard, 3 acres in the back, and just hit golf balls.
Okay.
And it was operations. So I took what I learned in healthcare and management, and being proactive in schedules, being proactive with forecasting people. Like when you get that call on a Monday and you ask how things went over the weekend, they go, oh man, it's fine. Everything went great. I'm like, we better restaff for this weekend because they're going to call out on us. Like, we need to be prepared. So production, it was production. Yeah. Managed golf and tennis properties, and it was fun, but it was a challenge with management. It was just not a good fit. And I wrote it out for 4 years through a recession. 2010, December 21st, I gave my notice. I said, I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm not leaving because I have an opportunity. I'm leaving because of you.
Did you know that photography was going to be your...
Not really. I started shooting because we did some pretty high-end golf renovations and tournaments. And I picked up the camera like 2006 after not having touched it for almost 10 years. And started shooting a lot of the sporting events, the golf and the tennis things. And I was on a board of directors called the Palm Beach County Sports Commission. And it was a tourism-based thing through the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and sat on a few committees, and had gone through leadership Palm Beach County. So I was kind of networked into Palm Beach County pretty well. And I called the guy that ran the Honda Classic, which is was a PJ Tour vet, still is, but not the Honda anymore. And I was like, man, I want to bring my camera. Like, go for it. So I went and shot 2009, went and shot, started shooting some of that. And they were one of my first clients. And I was the tournament photographer for 11 years. And so sports, the things I knew about sports and athletes is what I started with. I shot.
And I see that from your work.
Yeah, a lot more people in Nashville are like, oh, you shot Serena Williams or Tiger Woods or, you know, whomever it was. It started at sports because those were some of the early connections I already had. I was in kind of networking with them anyways. You cross paths. Next thing you know, you get a phone call. And when I started shooting full time, it was kind of an accident. It wasn't planned. I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing and be happy. And when I jumped ship, I'm like everybody else. I started looking for a real job, another real job. But in the interim, I was starting to take shoot some events. I was shooting polo a lot. I was shooting a lot of high-end polo.
Okay.
And I hired a consultant, and I was like, "What? Do I have a shot at this? Like, what do I do? Like, just
so you didn't know about your work. A consultant to review your portfolio.
Yes, yeah.
See how your eye
fresh
is.
Set of eyes. Yeah, like, can I do this? And they looked at me and they were like, I don't know who you are, because I was shooting everything I knew. I was shooting friends' wedding, events, some polo, my neighbors' kids, you know, what a lot of people do, right? They get in, they start shooting, they get excited by the things that are around them, the familiar things. And she goes, I don't really know what you want to do. And I said, oh, that's a problem if I want to do this. And that week, while I'm chewing on
real
that,
quick, she says, I don't know what you want to do, meaning from your work, I can't specifically tell right now, because this is a great topic. And I hope you can remember where you left off, because I don't want to forget this, because I do hear this a lot. Like, being there to shoot a shot of Tiger in the act of doing something is a far different responsibility than having, say, and I'm sure you've done this many times, 15 minutes alone with the man to get this and to pull him in a place. You know, those are two different pay cycle, everything. And that's what she's saying. Is like, I don't know where your style is to where you want to go as a photographer, right?
Partially, yes, because I was all over the board with what I presented to her as my work. She's like, she goes, what do you want to do? You want to work for the newspaper? And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. She goes, do you want to shoot sports? I'm like, maybe. You know, I grew up playing sports, having I still have stacks of Sports Illustrateds and Athlon Sports at my mom's house. And I'm like, maybe that would be cool, but like, how do you get that job? Like, I don't know. Am I good enough? And she tasked me with going and shooting. I said, well, let me go back. I said, I enjoy people. I like the interaction I have with people. She goes, maybe you're a portrait photographer. I said, well, maybe I am, but okay, let me go and let me explore that. And in that week that I was kind of contemplating, like, do I do this or do I keep looking for a job? I'm just kind of shooting. I read an online blog. Do you remember David Hobby, Strobist? Do you remember that? This was about 2008. He was a former photojournalist that started an online blog called Strobist, and it was all about small off-camera flash. And he had a guy named Miller Mobley on his guest blog. And at the time, I was sitting in a hospital. My mom was having a small cardiac procedure done, and I'm waiting for my mom to get out of surgery, and I'm reading this blog back in the day. You know, you're reading and looking at the pictures, and I'm looking at these photos, and I'm like, holy cow, this dude's good. And I read a little bit more. He's 26 years old, dropped out of University of Alabama, and I'm like, I gotta step. I either need to get serious about this, or I'm gonna be back to wearing a suit and tie every day for the rest of my life. And I sent him an email that day from the hospital. I'm like, I don't know who you are. Now, mind you, I got 10 years on him, thinking I've got all this additional life experience, which I did. I'm like, I don't know who you are. Like, but your work is incredible. You make me either want to quit or like really do this well. And he got back to me. He thanked me, very short, but thanks so much. Keep doing it. I appreciate it. Well, he's one of if you look up his work,
Oh, I know.
it's the best of the best.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that meant a lot at that moment because it gave me that spark to go shoot these 10 portraits that Amanda had encouraged me to go do.
Sure.
I got on a plane. I came up to Nashville to visit a songwriter buddy of mine, Rob Hatch. Do you know Rob?
Yeah.
And we went to competing high schools.
Okay.
And grew up in the rural Gulf Coast in the Big Bend where the hurricane just hit. And came up for that couple days, and I probably shot 30 or 40 portraits. And anybody that would let me, I'm just asking like, hey, I'm a photographer in town. You might, and of course, this Nashville. They're like, of course, it's free. But I did it for me.
Yeah.
And it was on my terms. And that was how I got a small book of work. I started shooting anybody and everybody that would let me, and I lit every bit of it. Lighting was, that's been one of my superpowers. I know how to light.
Sure.
And that was kind of the spark. And that was 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now would you say it's, with the landscape that it is, it's important as a creative or as a photographer to define your style, to say I am a portrait photographer, or to say I am not a jack of all, or to have a lot?
This is the thing. When I first got started, I would go to portfolio reviews, or I would get everybody else's input because I'm okay with it. I can take constructive criticism. I think a lot of people can't, and I think that's the difference. Because when I came here and I would offer my suggestions to a lot of young creatives, they're like, well, that's easy for you to say. You're doing that. I'm like, well, I'm just telling you, this is what I've learned. I guess I'm a portrait photographer, but I like to do other things. Like, I think being in a smaller market like South Florida, believe it or not, like is a photo market at the time, I had to be able to get up and go shoot a food story for Southern Living, or I had to go shoot a travel story for Garden and Gun, or I had to shoot a campaign for Skechers. I had to be able to do a little bit of everything to survive. I couldn't just be a portrait guy because those people were out there 10 years ago, and they would always get those calls. Yeah. And breaking into that was harder than being kind of a generalist with my own style and how I approach it, and then just delivering. So to answer the question, I think you have to know what you enjoy doing and make it your own. Like, I'm not a food photographer.
Sure.
I've shot food. I've shot dozens and dozens and dozens of travel stories that I have to go shoot the plates.
Yeah.
But lifestyle, music culture, portraiture, sports, those are kind of my world.
What about the photographers? I get this a lot. I get asked this question, like, do you recommend finding a retoucher, or do you recommend doing it yourself? Well, that's a great question because it has many different answers. In my opinion, in post, as a photographer, you really are defining your look or your sauce. Let's call it that, your vibe. So that's important. It's also important with time to not have to send off to facilitate. Also financially. So I kind of answered it as a photographer in this day and age, and I'm not talking about the big wigs. I'm not talking about the mega, the $70,000 a day photographers. I'm talking about the to sustain a career and a living as a photographer.
I think when I got started, I was trying to find a retoucher.
Sure, it was chic to do that,
right? Because you want it polished for commercial, right? Yes. And I hired a handful, one of whom did a fantastic. So people I looked up to in the industry at the time, or people I was following, were like Dan Winters and Chris Chrisman and Miller Mobley and Peggy Sirota and people that had been doing it either at a very high level for a long time or had been doing it at a very high level recently. And I was watching, they were outsourcing a lot of their final edits because they're big commercial projects.
And they're on to the next job.
On to the next job, right? And so I started going after their retouchers. I'm like, well, if they're using them, I'm going to reach out to them. How much better could it be? Sure. Well, it was financially not realistic.
I didn't find when I did the similar thing, I got persuaded to holler at different retouchers, and I'm not poo-pooing on retouching and retouchers. No, there's a very heavy need, and honestly, I'm jealous that most of them know what they do and all this stuff. But no, I never. As I sent photos, it was like Christmas Day when you got it back, and then I would open it up, and I'm like, "Fuck, man, this isn't it." God, it's not even real people anymore. Yeah. Or you've taken the life out of it, and la 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 la. And I remember my wife saying to me, she's like, well, "Honey, what do you expect?
Yeah,
you're sending a photo to a retoucher to retouch, and you don't want them to do much to it.
Right?
You just want these subtleties. Mm-hmm. So go learn those subtleties. Yeah. Go be a master at those subtleties.
Or know, certain trust factors have to occur. I found a retoucher that I work really well with. Mm-hmm. So for projects where I can afford it, I'll be honest, I can't afford it on editorials. No. There's no money in it in the magazine world anymore, or very little. There's very, very few times where you have realistically have a budget on a commercial shoot, because...
Well, now you're piggyback to the motion shoot.
Right.
Most of the time, if you're going to have a decent size photo need, they're going to try to parlay it.
Right.
I mean, not every one of them, but I mean, the ones that I've been, either I've been the director on the motion side or I've been the photographer on the photography side, it's usually parlayed with the two going in because you've already got this circus built.
Right.
Let's capitalize on it.
It's here for a month. It's here for a month. We're not going to do it next month.
It's a smart business move, but it does make it so that now the photo division or the video side can't move forward because they got to allow you now 3 minutes at best.
Yeah. And you're praying that you get your best work because, it's funny. We
that didn't always used to be that way.
Right.
It used to be
separate. Yeah. Right. And that's how I started. And it doesn't, it's like, it was 14 years ago. I jumped ship. Like I went full time 14 years ago, and the entire market has changed in 14 years. And then I hear from when I first came to Nashville, I would hear from some of the folks that have been here for a while, and they would, they're hating the next crowd. They were hating this next, the folks that are doing it now that have taken the last 10, 12, 15 years to build their craft to what it is.
Yeah.
The ones that have survived, that do it the right way and do it well. We're in the same phase right now because that was the 90s, the 80s and 90s when money was good. I hear about the golden days of the 90s. And I'm like, you did what?
I lived in that era on the music video side of things, $600,000 budgets.
Yeah. Yeah.
$5, $4, $3, $200,000. $200,000 was regular.
Yeah.
It was almost average.
Yeah.
$200,000.
And they were doing it on the still side.
Oh yeah.
And the photographers crushed because they owned the copyright, right? And if you and it's so funny, and I don't want to get too far off topic, and we were talking about retouching, and to just add to that, if anybody goes to my site, 99% of my website is just me toning it and making a good edit. When I say edit, I just pick the frame I like the best.
Yeah.
I do. Now, if there's something really glaring, I might clean it up a little bit, but 99% of the work I put out there, I don't go into Photoshop. I just clean it. I just pick the frame I like, and I tone it. It's grade it. Color grade it like in the motion side. But it's funny. I hear all these stories about we used to get on a plane and just go to Paris just because we wanted to go shoot something in front of some little cafe. And I'm like, they paid you for this?
Well, now they AI it and be done, know?
Yeah.
Do you feel, because you said the landscape has changed. Now, I would agree. The landscape has changed both in creative and in business.
Oh yeah.
But in my opinion, the most glaring change back to both separate now one is directors have to is now you as a photographer, do you need to master the skill of motion? Is that now it's a conversation because you kind of just said it's almost needed.
Mm-hmm.
So then if you say you don't, then you're saying, and I respect this, no, I'm a photographer. And I rest on this. And there's a lot of me. Because the battle between the two at the same time, being asked to do both, is crazy. It's nuts.
I think a few years back, I don't know, 6-8 years ago, I was like, no, I'll never do that. But then I look back and I remember being like early 2002-ish, when the first digital camera started rolling out, the Nikon D1, or the one that was like, it was like a 1.2 megapixel and it had a little screen about the size of a.
Okay.
And I remember seeing because that was when I was in the healthcare business and we did all the flu shots. We would go into all the stores and give out the flu shots. And I remember a news reporter came in to do a story about this, and he was photographing some of the vials, and he's shooting this stuff on this thing, and he had a screen on the back. I'm like, I'll never do that. I'll never. No, because I shot, the things I did. I was like, I'll be a purist. Like, I will never. No. And then I got about 2006-05 when I got my first digital camera. I was like, this is pretty cool. I can see it immediately. Mm-hmm. So it did make me pivot the way I process creative. Mm-hmm. And the longer I've been doing this, the more I realize I am a director. I have to direct everything on set. On a still shoot, I have to direct that. I have to direct where I want to set up. I have to direct. So I've been indirectly been directing for the last 20 years,
but
with what I do.
But to transfer that into viable motion work is more than just, it's putting, because like to become a director, you do have to put in the same thing, the same path, everything you described earlier on here about your journey into photo. Mm-hmm. It's that multiplied. Well, how is it multiplied? It's motion, more moving parts. Mm-hmm. It's not just you and a camera and a subject. It's not. It's a camera, accoutrements.
Right.
Accoutrements have to be manned.
Right.
And then it's just, okay, what are you doing? You're just doing a moving still image? No, you want to tell stories, do you? Yeah. Oh, you want to add the moving parts and the level. So it's a lot more involved.
Right.
And then you've got the post.
Yeah. That's the part where.
So to build it's what I'm getting at is it's for any photographer, it's looming. It's like, dude, really? How am I going to get into the game now?
Right.
Is that something that goes through your brain in a very, I would understand. And I had that when I had to relearn Photoshop or something.
Oh, yeah.
I hate, us creatives don't like change.
No.
We learn it, we get it, we finalize it, we beat it in, and then all of a sudden, you got to go learn a whole new craft. Yeah. Then you got to learn the business.
And then you got to figure out how to sell it.
Market it.
And the process that go with, it used to be I would bid on projects for the work that I had. Then I had to start putting treatments together for stills. And then I'm like talking to my video guy, they're like, well, we've been doing that for years. I'm like, wait, what? To take the chance that you don't even get the job and then your work. And I realized pretty quickly that a lot of my ideas were getting lifted and used in other projects. And I said, well, man, if that's what happens on the motion side, I can't imagine how that really big grandiose idea works on the motion side, because it's just going to get into the ether,
Yeah.
So the short answer to that question about the fear of it is absolutely. Especially as technology has changed and I've gotten older and the landscape and the competition is younger and more savvy to technology.
Yep.
Absolutely. Doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it. No, I love it. I secretly love it. I love putting shots together and telling stories and being involved in the edit from here's what I'm thinking. This is a reason why I shot this, or the reason why I filmed it from this angle and this story. This is the narrative that I want to tell. And I remember early when I would go to portfolio reviews, like 2015, I'd go to New York. I would go to, up until COVID, every year, I'd probably take 4 or 5 trips to LA, New York, Chicago, and go to portfolio reviews to show my work, right? You have to get in front of people. You pay a small fortune to get in front of the right eyes. And that was marketing, right? And I would sit there.
And that's good of you to do that.
Yeah, well, that was my sales background.
That's good.
That was a superpower. Like I got real lucky / I was prepared very well that when I started, I had to go 100% or I wasn't going to make it. And that's how I got some early success, was just getting the right eyes on my work, because I was out there selling myself like, hey, I'll take a meeting. You can meet next Tuesday. Well, is there a flight leaving Palm Beach? I will go up there for one meeting, and while I'm there, I'll stay on somebody's couch and I will try to get more meetings because, hey, I'm coming to town. I wonder if I can meet with you and show you my book. And that was the grind. But as I was showing my book, they're all like, do you do motion? Like the way your book's put together and the way you go from colors and tones and things, like you're telling this story. And I didn't notice it at the time. I did it because it was the way my brain was working. And it was just kind of the way I would lay things out. And now there'd be a couple duds in the middle that didn't match, but once you take that, you're like, oh, that makes more sense. Yeah. And you have somebody come in and kind of help you with that edit. So yeah, I have enjoyed getting to tell a story in a different way through motion. I say motion. I don't even know why I say that. People give me video. I was like, yeah, I don't know why there was stills and motion.
Yeah, it's kind of how,
But now, yes, the need is the canvas. I'm not saying stills are a timestamp, right? You look at something and it's iconic, and it is a single thing, and it tells something a little different to everybody that looks at it. They're looking at a different part of that. When you're telling the story, you're providing the narrative. The still is it's interpreted. You have to interpret that, right? I'm looking at photos on the background, and I'm like, that's a story. That's a story. That's a story. That's a story. And it's me looking at it going, oh, well, I wonder what happened there. The motion side or the video side is you're explaining.
We're telling that,
right?
Yeah.
But for young creatives or any creative, videos and short form and all of those things, you're seeing more of that than you are seeing the printed visuals. The magazine ads aren't as, you're not going to jump into magazine work very quick, very easily. Or if you do, you're not going to make any money, and you're not going to survive. Editorial used to be my secret bread and butter. I was shooting 10, 20 editorial assignments a month. You do the different, you'd get the call and it's like editorial beget editorial. You do one, and next thing you know, you'd get sent on another one because you're working with a particular photo editor, and they're like, hey, look, I got something else for you down in Birmingham, or I got something over in, I got to shoot Muhammad Ali twice because I'd moved to Nashville, and the photo director that I had met several years earlier, who I'd only gotten one assignment from, was just, you're just geographically relevant. You can go to Louisville. I'm like, dang, okay. Wow. And then you go, I'm going to make not much money on this, but but I'm getting to go take a portrait of Muhammad Ali. Like, are you kidding me? A few months before he passes away. So looking back, I should have been shooting motion the whole time. I should have been documenting that. I should have been telling my own narrative and doing some BTS and of all the projects.
Well, you say that, that's interesting, because it sounds, what you're saying is, as we move into the day and age we're at now, it feels like a creative needs to brand themselves and show themselves in all aspects. So in other words, is it your story? You know what I mean? Like, do you become more than just the photographer. You're telling the story in all aspects.
You
So-
know, it's
It's definitely better financially when you can provide both services.
oh, absolutely.
You know,
But you don't want to lose your soul. And I've even found that even just the work that I do in stills, I mean, it's hard to turn down work, right? If it's not the right work.
I'm actually kind of big on that. Actually, I do turn down.
Oh, I turn down a lot. Yeah.
When
sorry.
the work isn't right, or if the arrangement isn't right, there is something beautiful in the power of no.
Yeah.
I had to learn that the hard way of doing a lot of yes, and then just beating my head on this very desk. Why did I do? I gotta learn. Stop. And then when you finally do say no.
Yeah.
You know, the call comes back with the right things, or if it didn't come back to you, you still are at that level in the eyes of the client, so they come back on a different job with the right parameters.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm glad you said that too, because I'm a no person as well.
I'm a no person. Yeah.
But it's not like no. It's let's talk about how we can make this
Right.
beneficial to both people. And here's what communication is so important when you're negotiating a deal. I came from an era when I was young and I was at production companies. I had agents, I had reps, I had a Midwest, a Northwest, a blah, 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 you know, all these people. And I just was the kid in the room, and they just
tell you.
write treatments and they tell me where to go.
I never had a rep.
So that was a question. Do you believe in reps? Okay, so in the thing that I've up until now, like I'm a director, I'm a photographer, I'm a podcast host. I have to plan social meetings with social media team to figure out what we're doing. I own a business. I have to make it. It's you are everything.
Mm-hmm.
And with ownership, one thing I do want to talk about. It feels like, do you feel like as a creative, you have to have your own brand, meaning financially, YouTube, brand deals, anything? Is that where we are now, to where it's so, now listen, how hard is it to get paid by by people? How, in other words, you have to have feathers. And you kind of hinted to it 2 minutes ago, where it's like, yeah, I should have been filming. Oh, should someone have been filming you? Filming him? You filming video, you filming photo, and then this person filming you. And
it's an ecosystem.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm saying that because the landscape has changed so much that we now have to take some ownership in our brand for futures to come, for years to come. Do you understand? If and this takes us right into usage and rights of photos and buyouts and everything. Let's talk about that, because I do know you stand. You have died on that hill. You've laid on that sword. I have too, and I respect you for it. And the few times we've talked, one at Best Buy, that was the first thing we went right into. So I wanted to bring that up. Do you deal with, hey, we really love your work and we can't wait to work with you, and there seems to be all kinds of fun play. Like now, you don't get the contract until you're done shootings, and all these how can you, with a record label and a management and everything and legal teams, how come you can't figure out how to get a contract to me before we shoot?
They can't even, and this is not a knock against, it's a different, if we're talking specific Nashville, if we're talking music industry,
I deal with it all over the place.
I do too. But I've never seen it coming here, having done work with major brands, celebrities, athletes, ad agencies. There was a process. There was a very clear rights part where you negotiated those rights to in an equitable way for both parties.
And every time I have done advertising, it's been that.
Yeah. They're wanting more.
100 out of 100.
They want more.
Sure,
Obviously,
but it's still arranged beforehand.
Right. And now when I got to Nashville and I started getting calls and approaching labels, they would just assume I was going to give them the entire job. And then they would tell me, yeah, it's just for a single and it's $350. I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that. I just can't do that. And I said,
my car doesn't start for
I can't get an
$350.
assistant. I can't, like in my process, right? Like everybody's got a different process.
Yeah.
And I think what the part of the challenge is in the last, let's call it 8 years, you have a crop of decision makers who have been trained poorly by uneducated creatives, and now they expect things where before, from a music perspective, the photographers would get paid based on how many albums they sold. They printed 100,000 albums, they get paid for that. If it went to 1 million, they made more money because they had the tangible negatives to be able to deliver, right?
Sure.
Now it's just a file and it's gone. So people don't, and the cycle has changed. So we need more. A single, what do you mean you just need a single? We're not going to shoot just one setup. You're going to expect while we're there, we're going to shoot a few different options to get the right single, but then you're going to use
merch and everything else. You're going to use 7 other images. And
when I get when you get well, we need to use this for merch too. And it's like, okay, great. Yeah. And they'll say, well, it's $500. I have $500. I'm like, you're not going to sell more than $500 worth of merch. Like you're going to sell $500,000 worth of merch in about the first 3 months.
First leg.
Yeah, well, depending on who it is, right? Even if you're a baby artist, if you're a small artist, you're going to sell more than that.
Absolutely.
So I'm a huge, huge proponent of copyright.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm
ownership.
I'm a huge. I mean, you can see I am.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's all fair. Yeah. I work out so many fair deals, and I think what I'm getting at is to young creatives, and I shouldn't even say young creatives,
any
inexperienced
creative.
maybe creatives or any creatives. Maybe if you're just feeling a little gun shy, don't just have a fair dialogue before you jump in.
Or text Spidey.
Or text me.
I'll tell you what, I can't tell you how many people that are uber successful in the industry right now in Nashville that I don't want to say secretly mentored or have given my honest opinion to when they've asked me. Yeah. And I'm not putting that on me. It's just, I learned it because when I first started, I bought a book that was How to Survive as a Photographer, right?
Wow.
And that was ironically, my consultant was one of the authors of that book. Okay. And then the next book I bought was by John Harrington, Best Business Practices for Photographers. And it talked about copyright. It talked about contracts. It was all the stuff I prepared myself to. When I got in, I'm like, I need to do this the right way from the beginning. I was only 3 months into doing this when I reached out and hired a consultant to put me on a path.
I agree. I agree. You're doing some great things.
And that was probably the thing that set me up for success was I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I got the first ad job I ever got, I was driving somewhere and I got an email. I just happened to park. I was at a stoplight and I just happened to look at my email, and it was from Donor Agency out of Detroit.
Oh, I work a lot with them.
And it was a campaign for JBL Harmon with Mariana Rivera. Okay. So I'm like, they're like, hey, we love your work. We saw your picture, or you saw some of your work in PDN, and we think you might be a good fit because I was in South Florida. That for whatever reason, they always said there wasn't a lot of photographers in Florida. There were some fantastic photographers, but I don't know why I always got told that. And I said, hey, we want to have you shoot Mariana Rivera it's his last, well, at the time we didn't know it was his last season. It was the spring. And I had no idea what to do. I knew this was a big deal. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know how to answer that email. And I said, hey, I'm about to jump on a plane right now. Let me get my office studio manager in touch with you. I did not have a studio manager. I called my consultant and I'm like, I need help. I need somebody to put an estimate together. So I got them in touch, and next thing I know, I get this call from my at the time, it was my producer on the project, who my consultant reached out to and said, hey, look, he needs help bidding this. And she's telling me all these things. And she's like, okay, here, does this sound right? Like $60,000 or whatever for this, and $40,000. And I'm thinking, I've been doing $500 editorials and I'm thinking, what'd you say? And then she goes, well, we haven't included use yet. And I said, what are you talking about? She's like, because I'd read about it, but I didn't understand it. She goes, no. That's just your fee.
That's to get you to be creative.
And this is what it costs to produce that. Now we need to talk about what are they going to use it for? And I was blown away. I was like, another $50,000? You're going to tack that onto this project?
If not more.
If not more, right? And this was a very simple one ad, one publication. That was it. So I go do the shoot. And the creative director from Donor was the guy that created the Geico Gecko.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there going, that's pretty cool, And several months later, I'm in New York at a portfolio review with a bunch of other photographers. And our little flex was we'd go to like one of the places in Grand Central and go to the magazine stand and everybody's showing off their work. Like, I got this cover, which was kind of cool. Looking back, it's kind of like, it was nice to see your work printed.
Oh yeah.
And I look, and the guy says to me, he goes, is this your frame? And I look, and it's in another publication, major publication. The ad that was only supposed to run in one.
Yeah.
I called my art buyer, and she's like, you got to be kidding me. And I said, what do I do? She goes, I'm going to call the client. I guess they must have run it in I found it in 2 more. And I said, what do we do? She says, we got to charge them more. And I said, okay, and what do I do? She goes, what do you think's fair? I said, why don't we do a unlimited use for 2 years for $50,000? Because I'm just going off of, I wasn't even, at this point, I'm like savvy to what things cost. And she goes, okay, let me pitch that to the client. Client only wants to just pay for what they've done. They don't think they're going to use it again. Okay. They said, well, what about 20,000? I said, okay, I'll take that money.
Yeah.
Then I understood the value of what your copyright was. Yeah. I gave them the ability to have 2 years, unlimited use, no billboards, no out of home, for $50,000. They came back to me 6 more times to use that stuff in their flagship store, and because that was his last year.
Yeah,
6 more times. I probably made $100,000 plus
off of that photo,
off of one image that they could have had for 50. It cost them more because they weren't thinking long term. And I think that's kind of what's happened here. They're not thinking long term. They're thinking now, which is where our culture is now.
Or is it that they're thinking, or are they thinking long term and trying to get all the ownership?
Well, that's what the labels do.
Exactly. We don't know, but look at all this value we have.
Yeah.
We just need to own it. And therefore, because I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm sure you'll agree. You've lost jobs over this.
Oh, many.
Exactly.
Yeah, with and not just jobs, like entire record labels because I'm difficult.
You. Yeah, you're difficult. Yeah.
And I said, well, wait a minute. Well, they said, well, why do you have to own it? Well, we don't want to come to, we don't have to come back and forth for everything. I said, well, you don't really have to do that.
I don't do that. I work with my clients. I work out such beautiful arrangements that everyone's super happy.
And I said, look, I've offered, well, look, why don't we just make it for the term that the artist is with you in your label? Like if they leave, then it's that let's get creative. Or why do you need to own it if that artist leaves?
You've already made yourself quote unquote difficult.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Just in the 3 questions you asked.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Because the others don't ask.
Yeah.
They don't ask. They're just happy with a t-shirt and a hot dog.
Yeah.
And
to
they move
say
on.
they did it.
It's an ego. That's back to social
play.
currency, which leads me right into social media.
Yeah.
Since you are not do we value agents, reps? Do we as much? Do we need production companies? Do we need the
machine?
Do we need the machine? Do we need to be part of it? That I agree with having someone handle your business affairs for you. I do. Troy and business managements, and
I think it depends on the individual person. My brain works a little. I am not the crazy all creative all the time person. I am not the just go make art.
Me,
right? Yeah.
Troy's like, nah.
but because I came from a very structured sports into team corporate structure thing, I think, and I'm more on the technical side of that, the business and how to, trying to play chess with when to lean in, when to back out, to navigate relationships. And
Do you think that affects your creative a little bit?
probably because
Because you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
leaning on this principle of
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And then you got this emotion as a creative
Yeah,
in
they
one
fight.
brain.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I look back, I've got so many ideas for personal work, and I've been talking about them for years. I haven't started them. I think a lot of people have that. But when it comes to the struggle between that technical and that creative, like I think I have it more maybe than most.
I had similar things. I had to build the team or sift through people and see where I didn't like it and make it fill in a gap or two, a hole.
True.
That could be hurting me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have it. But if I find someone who can have it,
Yeah.
Troy, it's makes me stronger. It makes me, I don't have to worry about it now.
Right. And I think when I got started, I was doing everything. I learned how to light. I learned how to edit. I learned how to market. I learned how to do my own promo. I had all that going on.
Moving in that brain too.
So I didn't need a rep. I always thought I wanted one. I'm like, I need a rep. I need a rep. I need a rep. I need a rep. And then I was watching and I realized I was watching my photographer friends, peers, people I looked up to that had their reps, and you're thinking all they're doing is going out and getting them work. Well, some of them were because of relationships that they've had. And every time I won some awards early on in PDN, and I'm like, when is it all going to happen? Then I had people reaching out to me saying, hey, have you considered, we'd like to possibly represent you. And then I thought about it. I'm like, I'm doing all this work. Like I'm doing it. And that was part of my process. So for me,
well, what someone's going to think when they hear you, and I'm getting better at this to stop, because otherwise I'm like, I wanted to ask that.
Yeah.
Well, what if this company gives you bigger work? They have a reach to bigger clients that you don't have. You only have the reach to people you've had.
Right.
Maybe that's good enough.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly. I was finding myself getting approached by reps who had rosters of very similar styles, right? So I would just be, I would get maybe the crumbs.
Or you just be another spaghetti noodle thrown at the wall to see if that one's stuck.
Yeah. And then I would go to these portfolio reviews two or three or four times a year, and I would see photographers jumping ship to different reps, and reps they weren't. It's a partnership and it's a marriage, and you have to be completely aligned, I think, with your rep.
Okay.
Because to me, in my opinion, because I was outgoing, I was a salesperson, I was pitching myself, and I had no problem doing it. There are a lot of creatives that can't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
And I've said to and me not.
Yeah.
I can come in town and swim around and go hit up any studio and go into any but out to New York and art buyers and I crumble.
It's the I've got 15 minutes. I got 10 minutes. And you're like, okay, what do you want to? How do you? It's speed dating.
But one thing I'll digress from an idea I had, but I wanted to mention this on the podcast. A rep hit me up once for photo, and we got on the phone, and she sees my work, and her review. It wasn't a review, but it was almost like I thought she wanted to take me on. And she looks at the work and she's like, what you need to do is go out and shoot. I just need to know what your personal eye is showing, like some personal work. And I'm like, hold up. I'm trying to make money, and I'm showing you a 35-year book of everything. You car ads. You can't. Are you telling me you can't market this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to go shoot some Pop Warner football thing to show lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that was like, click. Click. To
But
answer you, I'm doing it myself.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I have no problem working with donor. Those.
And I think that's.
So there's been one rep, and that's a director's rep named Tommy Labuda, and I will praise him to the end. And that's it. Everybody else has been rough.
All that to say, there are fantastic people out there.
Yeah.
And they have their roster's best interest and they have the industry's best interest in mind. The challenge is, I think, even for them, and I'm just thinking since COVID, the pitch has changed. The way we market has changed. I don't send direct mailers out anymore. I used to send 1,000 of them out every quarter with new work. Think about, where do the people work anymore? They're working from home. The meetings where I could go to New York and just go get a meeting, and then I'd have 20 art buyers around me showing work.
I mean, do you even have a book?
A
book that you make, an updated book.
An updated book? No, it's probably 4 years old.
Yeah, because when it mattered.
But I spent thousands on it.
I know, but
handmade.
Is it useful now?
I think they're coming back. I'm seeing a little market shift with people who are printing their books again.
Yeah, and by the way, independent bookstores are on the all-time high rise.
I think they're coming back because there's something to be said, especially in this town, where you pull out a giant portfolio of work that's beautifully printed and in a big case, and you go, boom. You know, look at some of the stuff that I haven't seen on Instagram. Yeah. You know, you're showing work that they've never seen before, or moments that only you care about.
In print.
Yeah, that's different.
Tactile.
It's tangible.
Yes.
It's a different experience than flipping through it on the phone, right?
Totally.
And so I think there are some really good reps out there. There's
I know there are. No, I know there are. Oh God, I know there are.
I think it depends on the person and how much help. If you're super creative and you don't want to deal with business and you don't want to deal with contracts and you don't want to deal with hustling too, and I take that. Let me go back a little. You still have to promote yourself. You cannot
any rep will
just
tell you
expect the rep to go do the work.
No.
And
any
I think
rep
that's
will tell
the
you
misconception.
That too. Yes.
People go, I get a rep, and I can just sit back and go be.
No, that's
you still
not
need
fair.
to go. You still need to do. You still need to do what they ask you, because it's like the Jerry Maguire, Cuba Gooding Jr. is like, help me help you, right? That is a symbiotic, and it has to be equitable in that partnership, or it won't work either.
Sure.
And you look at some of the folks that have been with reps for 20 years, 30 years. They know that network.
Absolutely.
They know who and when and
very
how
viable.
And well, right?
So would you say you subscribe or to the social media being the new mailer, the new going up to New York and knocking on doors?
It is. It has been. Yeah. I hate it. I do not like it.
No, I got to stop you.
Yeah.
I'm alarmed at that. I know why you don't, but I'm alarmed because you're so you seem to barge through, bust down the walls of marketing and getting yourself out there and doing it because you've done things your some of your moves to do things I wouldn't even have done. So I'm impressed by that. But then when we get to this, you're like, I don't like it. Why?
I think
what changes
it might be a generational thing. It might be every time I'm doing it, I feel like it's forcing me to do it. I don't like to be told what to do. I didn't like to have to be forced to work out when I was in college. I didn't like to be forced to run laps. It's like, I think part of it is, it is absolutely necessary. And I've embraced it enough. I've embraced it. Like, I went hard early this year, just trying to figure out some things and see what they work. And I had a really perfectly timed, the Beyonce song, of course I'm a photographer thing. And it went like 100 and something thousand views. And I'm like, did I make any money off of this? And I'm thinking people, and I had, you name them, right on, man, and it was self-validation that I probably didn't even need. I just needed to express it. But it's also just a cesspool of comparison. And I think that is the part where I would go there and I go on there and I'm looking through and I'm like, wait, such and such is working with, man. Like,
you're getting too much information. I was just about to say, well, what's the difference between going to that New York book stand, the magazine stand? The magazine stand. Because I did it. I go down magazine. The difference is you're getting all the information
there.
for there.
And I'm with peers or people that, how do I say this? Like, it's a disappointing thing. And here's a clip for you. Like, the creative world is a gut punch every day until it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like playing golf. You hate it, and then you hit the one good shot, and you're like, this is amazing.
I'm back, baby. Yeah.
And that is something that it took me a long time to really understand. I say a long time. You've been doing it longer than I have. Other guests on here have been doing it a lot longer than I have. It's the difference between the two, the things on the newsstand and the things on Instagram it's in your face. And it's
But is it self-control on your end or lack of? Or is it just because that device is on you? You know what I mean?
It's with you.
Because I definitely battled through the similar generational thing. Like I don't do very often, if ever, maybe twice, where I'm talking to a camera. And if it is, it's me just giving information.
Yeah.
You know, but like gloating and just saying, look, I couldn't deal with that.
Yeah.
So for me, when I hear you talk, I see me in that. You know, I had to figure out how to use it that worked with my insecurities or my fallbacks. Do you know what I mean? And that didn't mean, and if that means I don't do what makes me not feel right or makes me feel like, dude, what? No, stop.
Yeah.
I don't do it.
It used to be a really fun way to post new work.
Yeah.
Right. It was your website in everybody's pocket. They could go to your second portfolio, right?
Sure.
And some people do it really well. They post life stuff and they're shooting this their personal work, their landscapes or their whatever. Yeah. I really didn't do that. I was posting work because I'm trying to get work.
That's me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm not that artsy fartsy where I've got this little side project about it.
But do you need to be? Maybe people just need to see, what you did yesterday.
I did it.
What you did the other day. And you know what? Fuck them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately to me, that's what I had to say.
Yeah. I've even talked to my assistant. Like, do I just unfollow everybody and just push work out there? Like I've talked about, but then I look at things and I go, I get inspired by this every once in a while. I'll see someone doing something really cool, or I'll see the project that I was promised that someone else is doing on a reel and going, what happened?
Or just maybe ignorance is somewhat bliss, and just staying in your lane, doing your thing, get on, make your post, delete the app for a while, and then jump back on and okay, you know what I mean? Like there's got to be a way, and I mean I admit and I understand that it isn't for everyone, and it does conjure up anxieties and things that we're not used to, and it's also it's being genuine to you. And how can you use it to get your work out or you out or your thoughts out? I think that's, for me, I was like, I had to see the simplicity of it and get past what I felt others were going to see if I post this photo, and this, oh, he's just riding that train, or he's just doing this, or he's this. And I mean, there was no win for me just to say, I like this photo.
That's it.
And I can't help if I'm shooting Morgan Wallen or if I'm shooting this person. I'm not shooting Grandma Susan.
Right.
But I'm not
doing fall mini sessions.
Yes, but I like this photo, and I think you should see it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think I would go through flurries, and there was no method to when or how I posted. It was just what I was feeling. And I think that was the outlet. I would be like, man, I just love this. But it's the captioning it, and then you have to do the keywords.
Now,
you don't have to. You don't have to.
Put the name and be done.
You could, and you can, and there
is
that
better?
rules.
Is that better than not doing it at all?
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I told myself.
Yeah.
Stop. Quick. Boom.
Yeah. Trying to find the
and you know how many
caption.
And you know how many darn people have said to me, one of them lives in this house with me. I sleep next to her in a bed. She's like, I don't even read your captions.
Yeah.
That spent me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. You're trying to come up with some witty way of explaining something.
Yeah. The girl doesn't even read it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just like, all right.
But then you follow and you're trying to stay relevant with trends in a way. I tried it a hot second. I was doing, it was pretty fun for a hot second. I was forcing myself to do it. And then I realized like, that's not me. That's not me.
No.
I really have if I want to show an image, I show an image. And I don't know when the last time was I posted. It's probably since I met my now fiance, because I've been distracted by the love.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much.
So would you say that you've kind of had your moment where you are competing with the Joneses, or I got to do, and then you just said, well, I can't. I don't want to compete with the Joneses. Or I mean, I asked it about 15 minutes ago. I mean, like, now, is turning your photography business into Jason Myers the photographer? For example, listen to this. I want to sell fine art of my work. And it was so beautifully told to me by my wife when I go to like Aspen or these Vale and I see David, what is it, Yarrow?
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, $180,000 for this. And he sold 15 prints and this and that. And she goes to me, she says, you as a photographer have to be a person. You don't have to be a personality, but people want to understand you in those photos.
Right.
You as a person or as a creative is just as, if not more as, I shouldn't say that, just as important as the work, because a lot of times they're buying that character and who that person is in the community of music, or like Danny Clinch, you know, I mean, like, whoa, you know, like Esteban Oriol, like those guys are legends in a culture.
Yeah.
And it's not just the photographs.
Yeah.
It's them.
It's the
too.
persona. It's the interaction. It's the, you know.
Do you feel like we're in that age now where that's more prevalent than
Well, I see it with some of the I don't want to say younger tour photographers. They have created their own identities out of doing something that probably, let me be careful how I say this. It's not the right way to say it. Opportunity gets you so far, talent has to take over, right?
Absolutely.
Like
Cream rises to the top.
And we know, you and I know, and probably this small touring industry world knows, that if you're with the number one biggest artist on the planet and you're shooting something, your social value goes up, because you become attached to that world. And I see tour photographers have 500,000 Instagram followers. Okay, why? Is their work as good or better than anybody else? Probably not. Most of the time, but they're there.
But now, is that photographer, let's just say that, are they doing Mountain Dew? No. They're doing that artist's work.
Right.
They're not even really moving beyond that.
You know, that's the question. I was talking with another one of your former guests about it. It's like, well, what is that social currency has changed in the last few years. It went from influencer, famous person was influencer, to people with very specific target audiences who have accumulated maybe 50,000 people who a brand or wants to target, right? And these are like very specific demographic. Well, those people are influential. Those people are printing money because of what they've created and who they've become with maybe this very, it used to be like we were talking about, like, you have to define yourself as a photographer, or a style or whatever. The old school was, if you want to be a food photographer, you be the best food photographer you can possibly be. I couldn't go that route. I needed to be a little more general, but put my style and my eye on those 4 or 5 different things. Mm-hmm. I think that's the when we talk about being a commodity, I think when you become known for one thing, you become a commodity. You're not as interesting to me anymore. you're such and such's tour photographer. That's all I know. I don't even know your name. I don't know. I'd go, because I'm a fan of that person, I go look at that work and go, oh, that's cool. Maybe if I'm at a concert, I'll yell, hey, such and such, I follow you on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because that happens, right? How many times do we get approached by fans who follow us because we've just been on tour with somebody, or we've photographed somebody and they think they're attached to us because we're attached to that celebrity or that artist. And it might have only been for 15 minutes. They think we're best friends. So they think they're best friends. So they follow us, and there's some weird thing there. And I think some people, that is their validation.
But can they turn that social currency? Like you said, they're printing money.
Some can't. Well, I don't know if the photographer, well, let me back up. I don't think the photographers are.
Okay.
You know how it works on the road most of the time. They don't own anything. They don't even have access. They just get to post a picture. Some of them are making very little to just be on a tour bus and be part of that experience. Now, does that have value? If you're 22 years old and you're out with one of the biggest touring acts in the world, well, absolutely, that's cool.
I wonder what people think of me when I go on different tours.
Right.
I'm always jumping around, but
yeah. I mean, I don't do it. It's been years since I've slept on a tour bus. And even back in the day, I had arguably the biggest artist on the planet right now want me to go out on the road with them and was begging me to go out on the road. Management was begging me. And this was when they had a song that was just starting to do something. And I'm like, man, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me.
That's important to know. I mean, to know what you do. Like for me, I want, my lane of photography is heavily in the fine art.
Yeah.
It's music. And so for me, it makes all the sense in the world to go out on tours, runs. When I say a run, it's like a 4-day run or whatever, because the arrangement and the deal that's worked out, it's moving my needle towards owning and having co-owning and having artwork,
an
archive of, and when I go out and shoot, there's possibly some specific things I need to do, but really I have my agenda in mind, and these clients are hiring me for my agenda.
Right.
So I feel like really I've hit this lane now. Like, okay, good. Now I have nobody saying go do this. They are specifically hiring you because they see that you want to see that artist on a wall from a photo that your eye sees, and we're going to pay you for that.
Right.
Okay, ding ding. I've crossed over into that. That doesn't mean that there's not issues.
Right.
But I'm just saying I have made maybe you've seen it from afar following me on Instagram, but I have made it very purposeful that's what I want. You know what I mean? I don't mix things up. What were you saying?
No, I was just saying, that's funny you say that, because the last couple of years, everything that I've expressed as interesting to me or things that I want to do for the rest of my career, it has to be purposeful.
Yeah.
It has to be purposeful.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is the thing. That's why I've turned so many things down. It's because there's no purpose. It's just another face on an album art like that. Sometimes that's not enough. If it's somebody I have a relationship with and I want to help them because we've invested, and I think, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but when you said purposeful, it's like,
I love that word.
I think that's the one thing in our industry, not just Music City, not just Nashville, because we all know the same people. We all know the same artists. We all know the same managers. We know all the same executives, the creative directors. We know all the same people. The pool is big. It's gotten bigger. But like you said, the cream rises to the crop, or the cream rises to the top when you are continuing to deliver the work that you find purposeful, because I want every artist, every manager, every art director, every creative director, every photo editor, every label executive to know that we as creatives are as invested in you and as you are in your job or your artist or your career, because we are from a creative standpoint, we are building that pyramid up.
Pillar, yeah.
We are starting with, when we're asked to shoot a baby artist or we're asked to shoot a small campaign, we're not going into it half-ass. We are giving you our talent, skills, experience, and passion and leverage of resources just as much as we would for that top tier artist or that big brand. For sure. And I think that's what's gotten lost in the past few years or the last decade is they forget that we're as invested in these people as they are. Mm-hmm. That we in the artists too, like we're invested in you. You jumping ship and bouncing around, photographer. Like you keep your makeup person with you, you keep your stylist with you.
Yeah,
you know, but you're looking for something different creatively. Like we are invested in you. It is a job and it's a transactional thing. We get that, but we're invested in that person.
Especially because I've made it, for me, I've made a career out of almost, in a way, I say this not in a mean way, but in a way I've kind of always forced the hand of the labels because I'm so invested from the artist standpoint, from their artist. And I'm very close with a lot of the artists I work with. And by that, you kind of,
you have a little more juice.
More juice.
Right.
One thing I wanted to bring up as a photographer, I love your perspective both on advertising and music. I've often felt, and again, depends on what campaign you're shooting, of course, but as a whole, I have felt, even from the directing side and the photo side of advertising versus the photo and directing of music, I have found that the commercial advertising side is more of a technician work. I'm more hired in my preciseness, my exactness, my deliberateness and how to communicate to get it's very refined and scrutinized, which is good. Mm-hmm. But also from a creative standpoint, I just want I do feel like I'm
stifled
putting on the creative, the technician hat.
Yeah.
And when I go into music, I'm putting on that super creative hat. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Because
go make something cool.
Versus, cool. Or we just need something cool.
Yeah. Versus here's our boards. Yeah. Now, what's your lighting going to be like? What if it's an overcast day? Are you gonna? What's this and this and this? What's the background's going to be? How? You know, what I mean, it's like. So you're just like yes, purple, no, but blue, 4 and 3 Cheerios.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
Versus.
You
know.
Well, and I think I think that, and this is not a knock on the current crop of creative directors in the music industry. I think sometimes they just don't know. I think they just don't know. I think they just think, go make something cool. Because whether it is cool or it isn't cool, they're still going to pat themselves on the back because they have a job to keep. And they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Instead of leaning in and going, well, this isn't, we don't have a plan. So I'm just going to default to what I know best.
I just had a conversation last night with an artist, and this artist was talking about how they gave a week of some time to give to this social media agency. I guess there's these agencies that have, and they present. They don't just post and caption from the creative. They come up with creative ideas for that artist to do on a social media day or whatever it is. Right. And he sent me these things, and mind you, I'm branding him from a anyway, and I get these and I'm like, oh my God, no, it's what? You might as well be wearing a tutu and a hula hoop.
Yeah,
what are you doing? What is that?
Yeah,
and it just shows. Yeah, ideas. They sat before they can go get their latte. They come up with ideas, and like literally, they're just listening to the song and they just come up with something for the person to say based off of the lyrics of the song.
Ooh. It's not a brand.
No, it's not a brand.
You are a brand.
Yes.
I am a brand.
Yes.
Like, I think that's the hardest part for sometimes the artists. The labels, I don't even think realize that their artist is a brand until we explain it to them.
Or an organization.
Because they'll come to me with, and this is not a knock on every creative director and every creative entity in Nashville, but there's not a lot of creative direction happening. It is, we have an album. We need to get something out. We just need something. I mean, how many times, like the worst things you can say to creative are it'll be really quick or it will only take.
Yes.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, if it only take that, then you can do it, because the fact
we
that
only need
we get tasked with coming up with the ideas also, because otherwise I'll just charge you for a creative director role. Like what are you getting paid to do? And their jobs, it's hard. I get it. They are managing a new landscape of fitting more into a shrinking budget and getting more content out, because they have to create this now, this now, this now, this now, this now. Where before they would say, we're going to spend all our money on this album.
Yeah, I know. So let me ask you this then, because this is a question I have. I don't know. So then if they have all of that, I guess, I know the answer. You just have to allocate the funds to still do those projects proper and not just poop them out with whoever can do them and say they're good enough and it fits the algorithm because the algorithm says you need to post 3 stories a day, two posts.
It's killing the artists.
Yeah, and you don't have any artists, us and them.
Yeah.
The artists in front of the screen.
They didn't sign up. Very few of them signed up to go that route, right? There's a handful in the last few years that's how they got there, right? With social media. That's what put them on the map.
I mean, and I'm not even totally crapping on anything. I'm just saying the landscape has changed, and it's not gonna go away.
No.
You have to either adapt, figure out how you can use it to your advantage. But the Jason Myers that flew up to New York and did all these things he is now in a different place.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning from it, for someone who hates it, it's almost like I think you should rethink it.
Yeah.
And rethink of how to use it, or go do one of your projects that you said somewhere along. Oh, but I don't come up with it.
Yeah.
You need to just put them on a wall and on flashcards and take a dart and throw one and do the first one. I mean, that's like live. That's what we are. We're creative people who live spontaneous. I don't know. I'm trying to, as I get older, I'm getting more fun with all this stuff. But anyway, two small little things.
Sure.
Are you a gearhead, or are you? Like photography is like, oh, are you sure? This is the first question you ask. Is that a
no? When I got started, I probably was, because the technology was advancing at such a crazy pace.
Sure.
My camera bodies, I use primarily. I have 2 Nikon D850s.
Because are you in the weeds with Photoshop and layers?
No.
You say, I'm the same way. I don't even know how to.
No, I know how to light, but my footprint, like if I have to be, I have my own gear. I could not tell you the last time I had to rent gear for a project. And it's not because I have a ton of gear. It's because I know how to light, and I know, and I see sometimes when projects are just immensely over, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Y'all don't need any of this. That's production value.
That's how they jack up the budget, but it's also job security for whoever it is.
Yeah,
like a DP used to say that. I go, hey,
why are we doing all
this?
Why do we need all this?
It looks fancy, job security.
Yeah, and it's funny. I've had I've got some stories. We all got.
Now,
stories.
would you suggest owning your own gear as a photographer, and owning your right gear, or renting, or is it? Have you had better success? Just saying, because some people are listening all over and want to know. Should I buy?
I know photographers that don't even own a camera.
I do too. Actually, they fly in and they just rent it from. Yeah.
I know photographers that don't set up anything. They have a different process. Their style is what it is. They talk with their assistants, and their assistants go put everything together. They come in, everything's set up, and they start shooting. That's not my process. I'm very hands-on. I will grab gear. I will haul gear. I mean, I got a pickup truck with a topper on it that I've got slides. I think I learned that early, because being in South Florida, I had to be available the next day. I couldn't go to a rental house. So I started accumulating the things that I needed: C-stands and sand and grip.
Not all at once.
Good. Because I tell people, do not go out and spend a fortune on gear. I see photographers who are broke with nicer gear than I have ever had, right? They're not making money off of it. They're trying, but they go out and spend $10,000 or get a loan or something to get gear, and then they don't insure it. And then it gets broken in, their car gets broken into, and then they do a GoFundMe to pay for gear that they should have been paying $300 a year for an insurance policy.
Run yourself as a business.
It is a business. And that, again, best business practices for photographers. It is probably in its like umpteenth version. And it's a thick book. But Ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people that have done it. Don't think you know it all when you're 25 and been doing it for 2 years, because I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of egos on Instagram and social media, especially in the music industry.
Well, that's just covering up for lack of body of work.
That's a flex that they're trying, folks are trying to say, well, I'm on tour with this, or I shot such and such. I'm like, or the one thing that drives me nuts is when I see published in on their Instagram bio. That tells me that they didn't get a check from that place.
Yeah, they're stoked.
They're stoked to just say published in Billboard, published in Rolling Stone. And I'm like, I think you mean the publicist sent a picture that you took of an artist at a concert to be on a website. Yeah. And you got to disconnect that. It's good to see your name in lights, but make sure you're getting paid for it. Make sure the real value in what we do is making ourselves happy with the work that we get to create, but also sustaining it as a business.
It's so true. And I wasn't going to, I just popped up in my mind, and if it takes you 30 minutes to make that incredible photo that they love so much, don't be skewed at the fact that it only took you 30 minutes. Sometimes we think, well, it only took an hour of my day, I'll charge you X. It's not that. And I don't know how many 100,000 hours I've spent to make that in that 15 minutes.
Or be able to pull it off. And going back to that John Harrington, I feel bad. It's Harrington or Hetherington. I think it's Harrington. Andrew Hetherington is a different photographer, fantastic photographer. Look him up. I was at a workshop over in Tampa, and I remember he was one of the speakers because I was just trying to figure this out. Early on, I was going to everything.
Important.
And he said something like, if we all bid on the same project, should you bid more or should you bid less than I do? And everybody in there were mostly newspaper photographers about to get out because they were seeing the shift. Mm-hmm. They're like, wait, we got to get out of here before this crumbles on us. And they're like, well, you've been doing it longer. You have a little higher prestige. We probably wouldn't bid as much. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You bid what the job is. And if that means it's as much as what you're bidding, then why, I'm looking at it from a business standpoint, not as a hierarchical thing. No. And he's like, absolutely. He goes, because I might be able to do it faster. I might be able to get to a place quicker than you do, but you still bid the job the same, whether it takes you 15 seconds or 2 days to get the job. The job is the job. It's not, the time is only one factor in it, right? Absolutely. The use, what is it used for? I think
the fact that you can do it in 30 minutes and get everybody else on their way stoked is the what is it called? Not a principal, a premium.
Yeah,
it's a premium.
I'm looking at Michael Hardy behind you. Look, you knew when you grabbed that frame that you got it. Mm-hmm. You didn't just get that frame. Like it's here now, but it came from somewhere else because of the years and experience and the ability to understand your camera settings and where to be and where light was and knowing where he was, general vicinity.
It's a great analogy, great example.
Right. That was I'm going to guess about 320th of a second, 500th of a second. I don't know what the stage lights were, but I'm just guessing whatever fraction of a second that was. Yeah. Am I close? I don't know.
Somewhere. Yeah.
So whatever fraction of a second it took to stop that frame, well, that has value.
That's exactly it.
Right? That has value. Mm-hmm. It didn't take you all day to get that shot. It took you a fraction of a second, but you've been leading up to that your entire career. And I think that's what gets lost with. Yeah.
I love how you explain that because
we work in fractions.
Absolutely. And right? I love photography came to me by art in a way of an escape from the directing. Yeah. So I hold my photography very close to me. Yeah. So when I have fellow photographers on, these episodes get kind of off track because I just love, I'm learning as well from you. So one last question, actually. Sure. What still drives you? Now that the landscape has changed, we've talked, it's ending a positive thing. You want to, you shoot portraits. Maybe it's people. What do you?
Honestly, the thing that has probably given me the most enjoyment and purpose the last several years has been work I do with an organization called Creative Vets. They're based out of Nashville. They have art programs for veterans, for combat veterans.
That's right.
And one of the things they do is fly veterans in from wherever they are. They put them up for a few days. They go to the Grand Ole Opry. They write songs with number one and professional songwriters. They record the music. Crazy. Artists are now lending their vocals, and they're telling their stories through music. And when Richard Casper, I met him about 9 years ago, and he's a combat wounded Marine. Kept asking me, like, how do I get into this world? I said, man, I don't know, but why don't you start bringing folks by the studio?
Mm-hmm.
And so he started bringing veterans to the studio after they would go through their rite, which was heavy, if you can imagine.
Yeah, emotionally, they're pouring it out.
And they would come to me, they would see all the famous faces in the portfolio, on the books, and they would see them, and they would light up thinking I was somebody special. And I'm like, I'm just a guy that pushes a button.
Yeah, exactly.
You did some things.
Exactly.
Right? You did the real work to allow me to be able to do this. So for the last 7 years, I've been taking portraits of these veterans at least every month. We're in a few airports, Fort Lauderdale, Denver, cool, with the portrait. This was a side thing. We didn't plan this, but we have a portrait of the veteran, and then we have the song lyrics, and they can scan QR codes, and you can listen to music written by veterans with
got some meaning to it there.
Yeah,
that's what
why?
You're
Because
looking for.
Every time they appreciate what you do.
Yeah,
it is the give back I can do. I couldn't give a lot of money, but I give my time and talents.
Absolutely.
And things like that, when you feel compelled to use your talents in a purposeful way, that's the win.
Back to purposeful. We're going to end on that note. Man, I'm so stoked you came in. Don't be a stranger. And we don't have to worry about that. I was bumping you at Best Buy. Getting hard drives.
Both of us.
Stacks of them.
Both hard drives. Like
what are you doing? Getting hard drives?
Hey, man. Film ain't cheap, but hard drives are more expensive than film.
Thank you, my brother. That was awesome.
All right.